Haryana. Turning our attention back to the budget, I'm very pleased to welcome Mahesh Jaising, partner BMR Associates, joining us from Bangalore. Thank you once again for joining us on NDTV Profit.
Thanks for having me over.
Okay, let's talk about the ITES sector, and I'm going to zero in on IT hardware because it certainly looks like the budget has delivered for this segment.
Yes, so I think for the IT sector, like you rightly started off, that the IT hardware has seen quite a few hits, and this is all in the backdrop of the Make in India program of the government. What the government has actually done and what the budget does is that it gives a benefit for manufacture of consumer premises equipment. That's the phrase used in the law. This is for a bunch of 6-7 products, if manufactured in India, would have a duty rate of 4%. As against if you import these products, the rate would be 12.5%. So these products include routers, modems, set-top box for internet, set-top box for television. So really what the government has done is that they've identified products that go up to the last mile, and therefore not only on the back of Make in India, but also in the spirit of the Digital India program, these products have been identified.
Okay, so if we go beyond consumer premise equipment, and that's the term the government uses, there's mobile phones as well, where there seems to be a fillip for local component manufacture, right?
Absolutely. I think what's been done on the mobile phone is that if we rewind back a couple of years ago, there was, in the spirit of Make in India, a 1% duty that was brought in for phones that are manufactured in India. As against if you imported it, it was 6%. Last year, the change was 1% versus a 12.5%. So what the budget has done this year is actually tweak the scheme a little bit. So the 1% remains 1% for those mobile manufacturers that go in what I would call the whole 9 yards and do actually the population of the PCB and also the manufacture of their adapters, batteries, and headsets. The reason I'm emphasizing on those 3 last products is the budget has made a small change, and in order to encourage backward integration and manufacture not only of the finished product, but also the components and population of PCBs, certain additional levies have been brought in, which would make a phone a little bit more expensive if it is manufactured on a SKD basis and not on a completely knocked down basis.
Okay, you've talked to many of the companies that are engaged in this space post the budget. How are they viewing the budget proposals? And, I wanted to understand, how does it change the way that they will do business in India?
I think it's interesting that the component manufacturers are very excited about the changes. So if you take a step back on the mobile phone, yes, the 1% rate remains, but then there are manufacturers of mobile phones who were doing SKD levels, so they now land up paying about a 4 to 5% tax. They would now be compelled to manufacture these components in India to be able to move the needle to a 1%. So the industry reaction has been that they would either manufacture it themselves or outsource it. So the component level manufacturers are quite excited that they see this as a business opportunity, and actually what we will be seeing now is not only manufacture of a finished product, but also slowly a build-up of an ecosystem of manufacture of IT hardware components, and particularly on the mobile phone side immediately. So that there is some excitement and hope that there will be some more manufacturing for the 3-4 products that I talked about, to repeat, batteries, adapters, and headsets.
One is to say there's an opportunity. The other is whether or not there's competitive capability. Slightly unfair question to pose to you, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you think that there is competitive capability to deliver these products in India?
You're right, and even if you go back to the consumer, equipment, premises equipment, there is a 12.5 versus a 4%, range. So yes, there are competitive issues. Yes, we probably have issues around the logistics and labor and others. Without getting into great level of detail there, I think what business is really considering is that there's a 12.5 and a 4%. This gives you an arbitrage of 8.5%. And for mobiles as well, the arbitrage gets a little wider. So is the additional cost and effort involved good enough, or is the costing lesser than the saving, is what probably most of the folks in this industry are spending time on the drawing board, and with folks like us, where we are helping them, give them from the tax side, and they're looking at it from a business side. But what you said is quite bang on. It's not that easy to just say, okay, we've reduced the rate and overnight companies would like to just come in. they would consider aspects of business additional cost of manufacture of these products. But hopefully that band which the government has created should be compelling enough, and we will see more manufacture in India.
Okay, so the process of analyzing is underway. I'm going to ask you the same question from the government's perspective. How do the budget proposals sort of fit in with the government's Make in India push?
I think clearly the intent is an excellent one. The intent is to encourage employment by giving this reduction in duty. Then we keep talking about the ecosystem not being there. Yes, we have logistics issues, we have other issues, but it's sort of a catch-22 that unless one starts, the other is not going to be addressed. So they've got the ball rolling, and I think the government's in this process going to enable companies to actually bite the bullet and move forward and deal with what is actually challenges and also what are perceived challenges. And in the process, even that would give them the opportunity to be able to address some of these challenges. And all in all, I would hope and believe that these schemes should result in more employment for employees in India, and not only directly those employees who are employed for the assembly activity or manufacture, but building the entire ecosystem and the supply chain, which automatically then creates business and job opportunities through the chain.
Okay, I'm going to shift the spotlight from IT hardware to IT software. I reckon there's a little more disappointment in that space, isn't there?
Absolutely. I think they've had more misses than hits. I think from the what has happened, one is the service tax rate has gone up. That's across industry through an additional cess of 0.5%. But that apart, there are issues in that sector, particularly as we spoke earlier, around refunds not coming through, around certain services potentially not qualifying to be export, and we were expecting the IT sector, or the services sector was expecting that those issues will be addressed by suitable clarifications or amendments in the law. Unfortunately, that has not happened. Also, on the corporate tax side, we've now seen a sunset clause on the SEZ holiday coming in on 2020. The depreciation for computers being dropped down from 60 to 40%. So all in all, not too great news for the IT services sector and software for sure.
If we had to take the, approach of saying the glass is half full rather than half empty, one could argue that 2020 sunset clause is better than a 2017 sunset clause for SEZs, isn't it?
Yes, I think that's one way to look at it, and it's therefore, but I think frankly from the ground it seems to be a bit of a consolation that they are just 3-4 years, because let's remember that when we talk about the SEZ tax holiday, we're not talking about a complete tax holiday. There is a MAT tax, which in some sense results in an outflow of the tax. Of course, you do get a credit few years later, but it's a consolation is how the industry is probably looking at it. And then it sort of brings back to the drawing board on the viability of an SEZ scheme at all. And probably when we're sitting together in 2020, that will be the most hot topic, that do we really need to be in an SEZ, because this needs to be in a zone area which is not necessarily in CBD. The rentals may be a little different. The dynamics change, there are additional compliances. So why be there if there are no tax and fiscal benefits? That's a question that is being mulled and being discussed already after this budget, and therefore we need to watch this space.
Okay, would you term the misses in the budget for the IT software space as fairly material for the industry?
I would think so. I mean, I would say that the misses have been some that it's been prolonged misses, and therefore if you look at two top important ones, one being the transfer pricing one, and the other is on the service tax. I would say that it's not that all hope is lost, because clearly these can even be addressed between two budgets. So yes, there is a little bit of disappointment that that's not been addressed now, but I would, pragmatically look at it saying that it's not such a big deal, that, we can be engaged with the government and look for changes, clarifications, modification on the rates under the safe harbor rules, modifications under the service tax scheme, whether it's on the export rules or refunds. So I wouldn't say that it's a complete pushback by a year.
Okay. Extending our conversation to startups now, do you think there have been adequate incentives for the startups in this budget?
Yes, we did see a startup action plan, but I think just to recap, what is the key benefit that we are talking about? We're talking about a benefit that a startup will be entitled to claim a 3-year tax holiday out of 5 years. They need to have a turnover of less than 25 crore rupees. They need to have some specified nature of IT services, and also you need to get a particular certificate from the government. Keeping the compliance aside and keeping whether I'm eligible or not aside for a moment, on a standalone basis, the startups, the initial reaction has been that they're not too excited with this for a simple reason that in the first few years, you don't necessarily make too much profits. A. B is you also have an MAT tax, which is an alternate substitute tax. So I think from a startups, there is still hope and pray that there will be far more relief in different forms and not only confined to an income tax, because I don't think the startup income tax holiday in the current form and shape will be of great use for the startups, I would think. Probably this should be an opportunity to go back to the government, explain that why the 25 crore threshold should not apply, probably go back and say that the MAT tax should not apply. I would say that since the government's made a start on the startups, we should go back and figure out what works best rather than just saying that it doesn't work well in the current form.
Okay. Well, I'm going to leave it at that. It's been, Mahesh, great to have your analysis pre and post budget here on NDTV Profit. Really appreciate your time and insights here on the channel. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you very much.
After the break, we have Rajan Matthews, Director General of the Cellular Operators Association.